Hello and welcome to our Facebook Live today. Thank you all for joining us. We have a great session lined up for you. A new topic that we have discussed briefly in the past, but we're super excited about this one. We'll be discussing researching Irish ancestors with a special personal case study that shows anyone can do it and it's possible, and a very, very exciting discovery. So we're so excited to share this one with you. Before we get started, please let us know where you're joining us from today. And if you have Irish roots yourself, we'd love to hear about it. Are you located maybe in the US and you have Irish roots? And when maybe your family came over. So let us know and leave us a comment and tell us, which Irish ancestors you're researching in your family tree and what you're looking for. In addition, we have a giveaway for today's show that we're so excited to present to you. We will be giving away a MyHeritage DNA kit today to one lucky viewer, and all that you have to do to enter is just let us know if you've used our new live story feature and what you think, how it's helped you gain a different perspective on your family history, on one of your ancestors perhaps. So for those of you who aren't aware, Live Story is a new feature that we've recently released. I think it's less than 2 weeks old. And the amazing thing about Live Story is that it really allows you to have your ancestors speak. So you can choose to have them tell a story from your family tree, or you can choose another story or anecdote or even joke if you want them to tell a joke. And you can put words to their mouth, and taking an old photo of an ancestor, you can get them to speak. So it really builds on our previous feature, which was Deep Nostalgia, and it's really the next level. It's super exciting. It's made a lot of our users very emotional, seeing their ancestors like they never have before. So really an incredible feature. We're so excited about it. And we want to hear, what you think about it, how it's helping you gain a different perspective on your family history, what you love about it, what your family has really enjoyed about it. I'm sure that after you've made one, you've shared it with family and friends. So we want to hear how everyone is enjoying it. So let us know in the comments of this Facebook Live. And at the end of today's session, we'll be giving away a MyHeritage DNA kit to one lucky winner who lets us know in the comments section. As always, throughout today's session, feel free to leave us comments and questions. We love hearing from you, about all the new features that we've recently released, or, about any MyHeritage products that you're using and enjoying. Please let us know. We'd love to hear about it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker. We have with us Bernadette McGovern, who goes by Bernie. She's just such a lovely person and a great friend of MyHeritage, and she has an incredible story. I'll let her introduce herself a little further. So let me bring her onto the screen today to say hello. Let's get her on here. Hello, Bernie.
Hi, hello to everyone, and thank you for letting me speak today, and thank you for everyone watching today. I hope you understand my accent.
So, and of course, everyone, if you miss something or want to rewatch it at any point in time, I see there were already questions of, will this be recorded? So yes, all our Facebook Lives are recorded, and they are all available to watch afterwards on the MyHeritage Facebook page under the videos section. So don't worry if you miss out, or if you want to rewatch Bernie's talk at a second time, another time, it's available.
Thank you. What I want to say is my talk, I'm not a genealogist, I'm not a professional, I'm just a regular person like millions of people living all over the world who want to connect and look back to their own heritage. And what you talked about earlier, Esther, about the live stories and all these facilities now and things that people can use to bring back their own people, and you're talking about making this photographs speak and come alive. Well, this looking and searching for what we are doing, which we have done over years with pen and paper and archives, it's amazing what people have got now. But the theme throughout the whole thing, they're just looking for that connection. And those live stories that MyHeritage is promoting now, it's making an emotional connection. And
So
I think,
true.
and that's how I think we're all looking for that, and we've always looked for that. And when you start looking down your ancestors and at the paperwork and the black and white, they come alive to you through those, what you're reading in census and the connections, and you recreate stories in your own mind. How did they meet? How did they get together? What were they thinking? What did they want? So it's fantastic they've got these facilities now. But I had no system when I was searching. I'm not a professional. I had no system. I've got no files, no logbooks. A lot of it was in here. And that's just what I'm going to share today, because just a story, because we've all got little stories. And I was lucky to help a couple of other people find their people, as we say in Ireland. And that emotional connection for some people can be really, really deep, especially for people who were adopted, weren't raised by their own parents, which is a big topic in Ireland still today. Millions of people are affected by that today. And so I was lucky enough to help out just as a regular person, doing regular research, just the basics, and didn't spend a lot of money, a couple of DNA kits and a lot of time, and the kindness of people helping me online, strangers, and in Ireland, at home, on the ground. But it's good timing because St. Patrick's Day is coming up on Thursday, and it's great timing by My Heritage. And you were talking about nostalgia earlier, and I don't know about all your viewers and listeners, but when we were kids, my parents were born in Ireland, and they came, like many, in the 50s. They emigrated to get work, and they came to England, and we were born and raised in England. And at St. Patrick's Day, which we celebrated, through the post would come a bunch of shamrock in an envelope from Ireland. That was great. And you got your little bunch of shamrock. There was 7 kids in our family. And you pinned it to your jumper, and you went to school with your shamrock on to represent your Irish roots and celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And over the years, it's become much more commercialised. It's a big event in a lot of countries. But at that time, it was just very simple. And it was connecting back to your roots, literally and metaphorically. We were wearing the roots of shamrock on our jumpers to school.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful.
And millions of your listeners will identify with that, because they probably got sent a lot of shamrock too. And they probably, as years went on, they probably got sent the real nice badges that they got with emblems and a little flag on there too. And then, as you know, it's progressed into something that's much more bigger than what it was then. But that's the nostalgia, and that's the connection. You know, Irish, fiercely proud country, fiercely independent, and very private, which was a real pain, because trying to get information from your Irish ancestors living was hard. I'm sure a lot of your viewers could identify with that. It was that generation. They didn't talk much, and they could regale great stories about Ireland. But when you start delving a little bit too much, I was always told, mind your own business, which I couldn't understand, because it was my business, it's my family. But I heard that, and that was just them. So I'm going to go into a presentation now, because that starts mind your own business, and I'll just click it onto it now.
Sure. Yeah. So if you could just share your screen, and then I'll bring it up, that would be fantastic. Let's see if we can get this right on the first try.
Thank you. I'm up. Can you see it?
Okay, let's put it in. Here we go. Perfect. You're ready to go.
So my little story, it's not professional, it's not academic, I'm not very IT savvy, just like a lot of people out there. So my story was called Searching Ireland, because that's what I was doing when I was going back looking for my roots, because my parents kept telling me, mind your own business. So I had to start searching Ireland on the records. And I started searching a long time after they died, because when my parents died, I was looking for that emotional connection, which we spoke about earlier, just finding a bit more about who I am and who they were. They couldn't tell me anything anymore now. So it was just a great way of looking for them again. So I'm going to the first screenshot. Can you see it there, Esther?
Yeah, we're all good. We can see it.
So the first one's called Mind Your Own Business, because that's what I kept getting told every time I asked my parents, am I uncle and elders about their time in Ireland, their parents, who they grew up with, what they did. So I made it my business later on in my life, after my parents had gone actually, to start looking into my own heritage. And and things became much more available online, didn't they, over the last few years? So it made it a lot easier looking than having to travel over to Ireland and go and request records in archives, which I didn't even know where they were. So it became real easy to look for things online. And when I did start looking online, I started looking like a lot of people, just went straight to the Irish Census archives, and they were released in 2007, I found out. And it was the 1901 census and the 1911 census. And then later on in 2016, irishgenealogy.ie was released by the Irish government, which gave free access for the first time to historic records, which you could search and download for all the counties in the Republic of Ireland, births, deaths and marriages. It's a fantastic research and fantastically generous of the Irish government to give out that free information. It's fantastic. So when I started really putting my mind to looking into my own heritage, I actually contacted living elderly relatives in Ireland and America, asking them about their relatives, their neighbours, and about their life. And it was kind of hard to get information out, but slowly things came out and I was able to piece things together. My aunt gave me a great piece of advice. She was in her 80s and she told me, if you ever want to know anything about your own family in Ireland, ask a neighbour. And she was exactly right, because that's what I did. I would travel over to Ireland and I would ask people around and about bits and pieces, and I put things together. I did have the actual townland of where my parents were raised, which is really the key to looking into the Irish records for your relatives. You've got the county. The county, as you know, can be a big geographical area, but the townland is the smallest geographical area, pertinent usually to a family. And having that townland along with the surname and names was really, really important. I'll just move down to the second slide. Sorry about that. So I said it's all about the townland when you're doing searching. I found this out as I went along, because I was doing everything online, fresh. I was looking into groups, resources online, asking around online, and doing this on my own, like a lot of you are doing. You're doing it on your own and trying to figure things out. So that's how I started. So I went straight to the Irish Census. I had my surname, which is McGovern, and it originates in West Cavan, where my parents were from. So I knew the area and I knew the townland. If I'd just gone to the census without knowing the townland, with just my surname, the Irish census for 1901, there was over 4,000 McGoverns in County Cavan. And all of them, a lot of them have got the same Christian names repeated over and over again. So it was really hard to differentiate between the family. It'd be impossible, really. And in 1911 census, it was over 4,500 McGoverns and just less than half in County Cavan. So I'd be looking at around 2,000 McGoverns in County Cavan if I didn't have that townland. So I needed the townland, and lucky for me, I had it because my parents, I knew where they were from. Townland is the smallest geographical area, and it could contain either one family or multiple families of the same surname, and the geographical size of that townland would vary. And I've been told by elders over there in Ireland that townlands could completely disappear if a family moved away from the family, that townland, or the houses just became derelict. The name wasn't used in local language anymore, so that townland that you could be searching for could have disappeared, but it could still be traceable looking back at your own records. So I just put some links here because I know this broadcast is going to be, you can look back on it. So I've added in some links about what I found along the way. As I was searching along the way, I eventually put together a list of links to help other people, and I did a Facebook group called Cavanites second generation and beyond, because I'm a Cavernite. It's just a nickname that we use for people from Cavan, and I'm second generation. It's not a discussion group. It was just a Facebook group that I put all the links on for other people who were searching Cavan. And some of those links could be used for other Irish counties as well. Some really good links about looking at townlands and trying to search out townlands first of all. So I've included those there. And more recently, I came across one called townlands.com. It was fantastic, cavantownlands.com, and it was a really fantastic site that I found, and some volunteers have put together loads of information on there. So going out there and finding things online was a lot easier, and has become a lot easier, I think, over the last few years to find exactly what you're trying to find. Just wanted to say about nicknames. I'm sure a lot of your viewers will know that in Ireland, because, for example, where I'm from, the McGovern name originates around that area. If you go to my local graveyard, all of the headstones are McGovern. It's quite unsettling when you walk in there and we're all McGoverns in the graveyard. And everyone you speak to is McGovern, and you'll be talking to John McGovern, and I'll be talking to Peter McGovern, and he'll be talking to Bernie McGovern. So in those areas at that time, to differentiate between those multiple family names, the use of nicknames came about. And people still use those nicknames to this day to differentiate between those families. Those nicknames could be attached to a family for very different reasons. It could include characteristics aligned to that family, where they lived, the animals they owned, a personal characteristic, or a story from an ancestor. My McGoverns were called the Big Sir McGoverns, and a lot of people thought, including myself, thought that we were called the Big Sirs because our family, the men in our family, were really tall, generally very tall men. So I thought myself, oh, it's because we were quite big. But the story I was told is that one of my father's forebears was big on the word sir. When he talked in conversation, he always had added in the word sir multiple times during conversations. Is that right, sir? Do you know, sir? So he was big on the word sir. So that's what I was told about my ancestors' nickname. And I've actually been told by other people it was because they were big, tall men in the family. But I would just stick to what my own family told me. But I know those nicknames are not always welcomed by families. Sometimes they were not good nicknames, and sometimes families did adopt those nicknames and they went by them. But there was certainly a way of identifying people in the area, and they still are. And even when you're talking to, especially the elders in Ireland, they'll identify a family or a person by that person's name, added on with the person's father's name, and then that person's grandfather's name. So you know exactly who you're talking about. And I hear that a lot, especially among the older population, not so much a lot amongst the younger population in Ireland today, but that's just my experience. And as you know, probably yourselves, a lot of some of the Irish people would be christened one name and they would go by a different name using as a first name. Sometimes that would be a second name that they were given at birth, or just a name they were aligned. And often nicknames were added in. For example, in my own records, when I started doing my searching, and I found Honoria McGovern, in all the records, her name was different in every name. It was every record. It was certainly the same person, and I could attach them all together. But she had 5 different aliases. And sometimes they would write the name Honoria, alias Nora, alias Oni, or different spellings of Nora. So that was just one person. So you can see how difficult it can be searching through records and trying to locate exactly your people to that townland, to that family. And it is possible to disentangle them, because I did it, and I think if I can, you can. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, I got quite a bit of information from the Irish genealogy.ie combined with the Irish census. It was that simple. And those nicknames, as I've mentioned here on the slide, I have never found any documentation of nicknames, and they certainly wouldn't be put into formal records. However, I have been in touch with a cavern group in New York on Facebook, and there's I know I've heard that one of the founders of that group is actually keeping a record of nicknames for their particular area, which I think is a really good idea. And I have heard talk about it in Ireland itself in local history groups. It would be great to document those, because if the family died out, that nickname's gone. And I've heard less and less use of nicknames for families as they've just disappeared, emigrated, gone away. So it would be a great archive, and hope it's picked up. I'll just go to the next slide. When you do ever talk to people in Ireland, as you know yourself, who are you? Who are your people? Is often the line as you're going out and about talking to people. And we like to identify each other with our townlands and where we're from, and then we know who they are and about them, because it's still a pretty small country with a smallish population. And at those times, as you know, in times going back, the population was even smaller, and very often families, as I've done reading around the subject, had no way of getting out and about because there wasn't much in the way of transport. They often married within their own parishes, sometimes distant family members, and arranged marriages were made. So who are your people was quite important to those areas. And once you've got your townland and you know who your people are, that's your roots. And looking for that, if you get that townland and you've got your name and you start going into the Irish genealogy .ie to get those records, you need the registration district. Starting out, I didn't know about these things. I picked these things up as I went along, like you can too. So I didn't know the registration district for the McGovern family that I was looking into. So I looked around and worked it out and figured it out, comparing that site, irishgenealogy.ie, along with the Irish census, and also with words I'd heard in Ireland and never figured it out. I found out my registration district. So then I exactly could start looking in that area for those births, deaths and marriages of my family. So if you need to find your registration district, when you get that far, there are tools to do that too. And I've put a link in there for registration districts for all the counties in Ireland. And it's only your record is going to be in one of those registration districts. It could be hundreds in one registration district. But for me, and in my search, I've found sometimes you just have to do it the hard way. I'm sure I could have done things a lot easier, and I probably could have done. But I kind of did things from top to bottom and made things a bit hard for myself. But it was kind of good too, because searching like that, I found other things along the way that helped me link families together. And my family tree now today is really, really broad. It doesn't go back that far because Irish records only go back to a certain extent. A lot of them were lost historically or burned or destroyed or never made. But I've got a kind of broad tree. My tree's getting very broad. And yours can as well. So that main record that I'm talking about really has been the mainstay of everything that I've searched. And that was the irishgenealogy.ie civil records. It's really, really important. It changed everything when I was looking to my family, and I think it could for you. If you've got the surname now, you've got your county, you've got the townland, you know your family, you can go on there now and you can start looking and building your own family tree. It's free to view, it's free to search, and it's free to download. Handwritten records. A lot of mistakes I found in my family, just little mistakes actually, names, little spelling mistakes or errors, or sometimes when things seem to be written down the way they were pronounced. And even if you didn't know that Irish accent, that Cavan accent, sometimes you wouldn't know that, but I could see them, how it was pronounced. It was the way it was written, because I would hear it being said like that, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. So it's worth persevering with records. If they don't look right, just try to cross-match them, figure it out a little bit more. And it can be a lonely job doing all this searching, as you know, on your own. And there are lots of online groups now that help you with these kind of things, with searching, handwriting, looking into records. So it doesn't have to be as lonely as you, doesn't need to be as lonely as you could make it. But you know yourself, it's a lot of hours and hours and hours of research if you really get into it, like I did. And it can be quite addictive, and it's great to find those little finds and put it all together. So I assembled all my family tree on an online site and made it public. And that's how you connect to others and cross match and cross share, as you know. So I'll go on to do a couple of specific searches using DNA because I knew my family, I knew where they were from, I knew what I was looking for, I knew what I was doing. I did do the DNA, My Heritage DNA kit, as an aside because I didn't think, oh, it'd bring too much, but it was just a good way to connect to people who were related to me, and they had their trees public, and we could cross match and discuss and message people using the messenger service with My Heritage, which was really good. And also had my elderly aunt in America. She did it too. She couldn't quite understand the infatuation with family trees and My Heritage and looking back, as all of my elderly family members were the same way of thinking. They couldn't quite understand the purpose, and they were living now. A lot of them had emigrated, and they were just living their lives now, and they couldn't really fathom why we needed to look back. But I'm glad she did the DNA because now I can cross match with her and find I'm related to her on my father's side, so now I can cross match anything on my mother's side. So it was a great kindness for her to do that. And so I was quite known now in the family for looking for my own family dues in family tree, and everything else was a bonus. So sadly, I felt my elderly aunt on my other side approached me and asked me if I could find her mother. She was in her late 70s when she asked me that. She was a non-biological aunt of mine. And I felt it's quite sad that she has to ask her niece to try and find her mother. But that was reflective of an Irish society at the time, where she was born to an unmarried mother and she wasn't allowed to keep a child, simply. That was it. And there was no way when she was growing up of looking into who her mother was. It was a closed society of trying to find records, and that's slowly opened up more recently, especially. And it's been well documented, the history of Irish unmarried mothers and the treatment of the mothers and babies. So when she asked me in 2017, I thought it was great privilege, and I thought I'll try to do everything I can to try and help her. So we went through the formal process of looking for family information, the Irish government formal process through a department called TUSLA. And at the same time, I started to do my searches. But with a name like Smith, I felt this is going to be very difficult. And the only real information she had was her own birth certificate. She was actually very lucky to have. It's not always the case. And she was born in the late 1930s in an Irish mother and baby home. So I had the birth certificate with her name and her mother's name. And I can't actually remember if the townland was on there. I don't think it was. And then I started searching too. So at that time, mother and baby homes in Ireland were very much in the news and being investigated. There was a consequent investigation to the treatment of mothers and babies in Irish mother and baby homes. Subsequently, and more recently, there's been an apology by the Irish government and a look to make restitutions. So at that time, when I began to search for her mother, there was a lot of information in the news about mother and baby homes. So I read around that subject a lot. I looked at a lot of records that were possible, and I looked at searching methods and tried everything I can. On Facebook, there were actually Facebook groups assigned especially for her mother and baby home, and there are other groups that help people who are born into mother and baby homes. So I joined that Facebook group and I made some real good connections. And I joined lots of other Facebook groups that I could too in searching Ireland, the name of this talk, because there were a lot of genealogy groups popping up. And luckily for me, there was one that came in her area where her mother came from. That reminds me, I must have had the townland. Yeah, that I did have the town. Well, it was the town. I had her mother and her mother's town area, not the specific townland, which is the smaller denomination. So I did think this would be pretty hard. But I went online to that Facebook group for that area, that town area, which was split into smaller townlands. And I asked and inquired, and I also made connection with the admin of that group, who was based in Ireland in that area. That person was able to connect to other people in that area, elders, the elderly there, who would know the names, the families, the nicknames, and the stories a little bit about those families. And she came back to me, she said it could be possibly one of 3 families. I whittled it down, I worked around it, and I went over to Ireland too, and I visited, and I did more inquiries. And then eventually I got a name, and they said, oh, these people could be cousins of your aunt's mother. So I took it upon myself with my DNA kit, my heritage in my handbag, and I went up to these people, 2 bachelors living on their own in a quite remote part of this county, knocked on the door, and I couldn't have had a more kinder welcome. I explained the situation, and I asked if they knew this person. I said the mother's name, and he led me down into a back room, and he pointed to a photograph on the wall, and he said, oh, there she is. And that was her, after all this searching for years and wondering. And he gave me the information of where she was buried in another part of Ireland, and she was buried beside her sister, and he gave me the sister's married name. I carried on with my investigations, and he kindly did a MyHeritage DNA kit, and the results came back, and they were first cousins, and he'd already given me all of the family and the information about my aunt's mother. I'd also gone online because I was traveling between England and Ireland doing this researching, and most of it was online. And I looked for this headstone of the mother who I'd known when she died. I now had known where she'd sort of lived, and I went online onto these headstone online groups that people were doing, and people were kindly taking their time, taking photographs of headstones in graveyards and cemeteries all over the world and uploading them onto the internet so I could look in that actual. He told me roughly the area where she was. I tracked it down, and I thought this might be the graveyard. I searched the headstones, and I found her sisters, who she was buried beside. He told me she was buried beside, and I thought, oh, that looks like a pretty good fit. This looks like her sister. I carried on looking through the rest of the cemetery, and then I found her mother's grave. And in the background was a really strange headstone. It was kind of a strange shape. It was very noticeable. And then I went back to the sister's headstone, and I noticed the headstone that was looking strange and kind of noticeable pattern was actually her sister's headstone. He was right. They weren't buried side by side. They were buried head to head. So luckily for me, when that volunteer, took that photograph of that headstone, in the background was the headstone of her sister. And that just went married with everything he'd said. It was little lucky things like this and the kindness of strangers who went and took those photographs of that headstone. And the man who let me in to do that DNA and didn't shut the door on me. And they didn't know me, and they were accommodating and kind. And I found that to be my experience throughout all of my searches, especially when people don't know who they belong to, like my aunt didn't. That's my experience that I have found. And I hope you get that experience too if you're looking. So I think it's definitely worth checking into these Facebook groups. The more national ones, these Irish genealogy groups. They're national, and they probably could link you down to the smaller local ones or smaller local historians in that area that you're looking for. I did a bit of that too. I found some little history groups and got a connection that way. And a little history group that I found online, really randomly. It really took me a lot of work to find it. I went through YouTube originally to find some little videos they've been putting up there. And then I found somebody through that group, and he helped me identify this family I was looking for. And my aunt went on to meet her first cousins that we'd met who'd done the MyHeritage DNA. We're still in contact. They have a great relationship. And she also met her half siblings. So after by the time all this was done, she was over 80. So it took her that long to find out who she belonged to. But she did it, and so can you. So there's, that was our story about the importance of MyHeritage to us doing that DNA, because there was no way around it. There was no way to definitely prove that this was the family, and that proved, and all the information I'd been kindly given and been searching for and done the headstones and the local cemeteries, it all fell into place when that DNA result came back. I was so I wanted to give something back, because those people had done that for me. They'd taken photographs of headstones in Ireland and put them online. They took the time. And taking photographs in Ireland can be a very cold business, because I thought, I'm going to give something back and I'm going to do the same thing. So every visit I did to Ireland subsequently, I went in and I photographed headstones for those cemeteries. And I went to the website called IGP, Irish Genealogy Project, which I think is based in America. And I uploaded all my photographs onto that website to help other people who are finding people, because it's a great way to do it. Because when you find that headstone, you'll find other family members, dates, records, sometimes, as in our case, the whole address given to her mother who had died, including the house number, which I'd never seen before on any other headstone. I'd never seen the whole address given, including the house number. So that, to me, was amazing piece of luck. I had lots of little pieces of luck. And so going and doing that was a way of giving back. And taking photographs in Irish cemeteries is a very cold business. It's often raining, it's often really cold, but you will meet really good people in there and locals, and you'll talk to them, and you'll find out a lot of interesting information in cemeteries in Ireland. So it's well worth having a look if you go over. And I'll go down to the next slide, which talks about Irish babies in Ireland, which is still a topic today. As I've already spoken about, adoption was never actually a legal entity in Ireland until the 1950s. And even when it was brought about in law, it never really was taken up for maybe a decade or so after even that. It did happen, but not necessarily right away. A lot of religious orders organised informal adoptions, and a lot of babies went to other countries if they were born to unmarried mothers. And it's been in the news a lot recently in Ireland, and as I've already mentioned, and a new law came in just in this year, 2022, which helps to improve access for people who were adopted or informally fostered, those kind of arrangements, to get better access than which they've been previously denied. Being adopted and looking for information, as you know, it can be often closed out. Traditionally, they were not included, and it can be quite difficult, because a lot of genealogy groups I found will not allow members who have been adopted and looking for information, which I find is a little bit, we just wish it could be a bit more inclusive to people now who are looking for people, because it's very painful when you're looking for somebody. I haven't been adopted. I don't know what that feels like, but I can imagine. So a little later on, I knew a friend in Ireland, a friend of my dad's. He was in his 80s, late 70s, 80s, and I knew he had been adopted. Well, that was the word. He wasn't formally adopted. I knew that he didn't know his family. I approached him and I offered to try to help him because I'd had success with my aunt. And I thought, well, if I can do this, can I just at least try? And I spoke to him about it, if he'd like to try. And he'd told me that he'd tried in his past to find his parents. He was left as a newborn baby outside the County Cavan Workhouse, which then later became named St Phelan's Hospital. In 1938, he was left outside as a newborn baby. I hadn't realised that fact when I approached him and asked him if he wanted me to help him find his people. So I knew right away that this man's got no records, he's got no paper trail, he's got no names. The only way we could possibly try to figure out his family was with the DNA. And I'd been so lucky with my heritage DNA. I always kept that in the background. It was just so easy to use. It was easy to do the swabs, especially for the elderly, because they can use a mouth swab. And the online site I just found really simple, and I enjoyed using that. So I did a couple of tests for him because it was going to be a pretty difficult case, and I uploaded his results onto my heritage DNA. When his results came back on his DNA testing, I'd found some first and second cousins, and that second cousin lived probably a 10-minute drive away from him. And he was down at his house, welcoming him into the family within a couple of weeks in 2019. So there was another story. Joe had gone from knowing no one in his life, wanting to, and within a couple of weeks, a family member lived 10 minutes away and was in his kitchen drinking tea with him, which I thought was wonderful, accepting, open, and kind. And Joe enjoyed that visit. When I'd uploaded the results onto my heritage DNA, there was a half sibling sitting there waiting for Joe, who'd been taking that test many years prior. That was a great breakthrough, and I made connection by the messaging service. And I also had lots of links on my heritage with his cousins on his other side, and made a great connection with a lady in England who was Joe's first cousin on his mother's side. She was so helpful, as was his second cousin in Ireland on his father's.
It looks like we're just having some technical difficulties. I see that Bernie has gotten disconnected. Please let me know if you can hear me now. And let's see if we can get this back rolling. Sometimes we have these issues, but I believe she knows to rejoin. So hopefully she can get back on. Please let us know if this is working now and you're able to see us. So we hope to get this restarted. Every once in a while, we have these technical glitches. I see everyone saying they can hear us. Can you see me as well? Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can get this rolling. Can you see me as well? We're trying to get this sorted out. We have a technical glitch here. Hopefully we can get Bernie back on. So let's just try and get her back on. In the meantime, thank you so much for letting us know that you're all able to see me now, and hopefully we can get Bernie back on the Facebook Live. She got disconnected somehow, so we're so sorry about that. Every once in a while we have these technical difficulties. Thank you so much to everyone who wrote in and let us know that it's okay. We'll just wait a couple of minutes and see if we can get her back onto the Facebook Live. In the meantime, let's see. In the meantime, I see lots of comments here just about using the live story feature. So thank you everyone who has written in and let us know how much you're enjoying using that new feature. If you haven't yet, please do leave us a comment and let us know how you've used it, what it's like, what you're discovering there. We'd love to hear about it. And please do let us know in the comments section. It's possible that we'll have to restart again when Bernie comes because I don't see her joining at the moment, but we'll just wait a little bit more and see if she's able to rejoin on this Facebook Live. So I see that June wrote, live story brought my grandmother's story to life in a way that helped me start her story. My husband's niece loved the great-grandmother's live story, and she even joined my heritage thanks to it. So that's just so lovely. Thank you, June. Thank you so much for sharing that. I see so many. Kathy wrote, I used live story for my deceased mother-in-law. Because of the photo I chose, while watching it, I realized how much our son's older daughter resembles her great grandmother. That's so lovely. And I think, when you see them interact and relate to you in that type of manner, it really, really does help, visualizing and understanding more about them and who they are. So that's just so lovely to see. I see Claudia saying, how do you see the live story feature? So it is available on myheritage.com/live story. And also if you go to the MyHeritage blog, we have a recent blog post that explains all about live story, how you can get started. It could be that you're a MyHeritage user already, and then you can create a live story from, straight from your family tree. Or if you're not even a MyHeritage user yet, you can just upload a family photo and just create a live story from there. So that also works. I see Deb wrote, I'm so happy for all this information. I've hit a brick wall with my great-grandfather from Cavan, and this has been a great source for me. That's so nice to hear, Deb. Jean wrote, my sister cried when she saw the live story of her deceased husband and their life together. That's just beautiful. We've seen some really emotional, really touching life stories. We've also seen ones that have been more on the comedic side, funny stories about just anecdotes of different parts of people's lives, different things that you wanted to share that they experienced. So we just put a link there, myheritage.com/live story. So it's live story with a V, LIVESTORY. And we hope that you can all check that out. So I guess we will do our giveaway now because Bernie has not yet joined. So thank you to everyone who has given a comment and let us know. I'm guessing that Bernie. Oh, Bernie, do we have you back again?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just finished giving my presentation.
I'm so glad that you're back. We were reading some of the lovely comments that we've received in the meantime, but we, everyone was so enjoying your presentation, so we'd love to just finish it up. We're so sorry. It must have been a technical difficulty. It froze, and we lost you. So we're so glad that you.
Do you know where you lost me? I can carry on.
Yeah, if you open it up and just go back a few minutes, just a few minutes, that'll be perfect.
Perfect. I'm so sorry about that. I had a really good talk with myself, though. So,
We're so sorry about that. Every once in a while, we have some technical difficulties. We're so glad to have you back because everyone was so enjoying the presentation, so we'd love to finish it.
thank you.
And so I guess we're going to save our giveaway till the end. So if everyone can just hang on tight, and we'll give that, do our giveaway of a MyHeritage DNA kit as soon as Bernie is done. So let me just bring that up into the stream again.
Can you tell me roughly where I kind of finished?
Yeah, if everyone could just let us know if we're in the right place here, because I'm not sure exactly where it got disconnected for all of you. If you could just let us know. But here we have it up again. And hopefully we won't have any more technical difficulties. And thanks so much for your patience, folks.
No, I'm so sorry, everyone. Thank you for still listening. But you know what the Irish are like? We just keep talking anyway. So I didn't even know anyone was listening.
I love that. And June wrote here, she said, sometimes our self-conversation is the best.
Yay! And we don't answer ourselves back.
Exactly. So I'm not exactly sure where it cut off from everyone. I hear that June wrote that last she heard was, I found my Irish ancestors.
Okay, maybe I should go right back to the beginning. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where it cut off for everyone, but just a few. Jerry says, the man who had no family and met his cousins.
That could have been my aunt. So I'll get straight down to. So I've done the part about the searching of the records. Did people get that?
No, it was only a couple of minutes ago. It was very, very recent. It was about, I think it was in Joe's story about.
Let me go straight to Joe's story, okay? So I'll just carry on. So I'm going to start with the look of the Irish. Was our look in MyHeritage DNA. Is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's where we were.
Right, let's go. So can you hear me?
Perfect.
I'm going to carry on regardless because I just like talking. So Joe was a friend of my father's growing up. They grew up next door to each other. And Joe was, I had always known all my life that Joe was, in quotes, adopted. But that's all you knew. You never asked anything and you never said anything. That was just the way. And I knew now that I helped my aunt find her people. So I asked Joe, I went to visit Joe in his house. He's still living right beside where he lived when he grew up. And I said to Joe, you know, Joe, nowadays they can find people by DNA. If you want me to do it for you, I can do it for you. I've done it with somebody else and we've had a bit of success. It's worth a try if you want to try it. The first time in his life, Joe actually explained to me his story, which I'd never known before. And out of respect, I never asked him. He explained to me he was left as a baby outside what was called, at that time, County Cavan County Home. In 1938, as a newborn baby, he was left outside that building, which became called St. Felian's Hospital. So Joe I didn't know that, and Joe shared that with me. So at that moment, I knew that Joe did not have a paper trail. If there was any records made in 1938 when he was taken into that hospital, it would probably just be an admission record. There would be no parents' record or anything. So I knew at that moment that the only way was going to be DNA, which I had with me anyway because I'd known that this works. Joe did the DNA test and he came back. The results came back in 2019 in January. So I used the well-known DNA service, and then I downloaded his results and put them on all the other DNA sites. I've had a lot of luck with MyHeritage DNA. I liked using MyHeritage DNA because it was a swab as well. That was a good thing for the elderly. And it's really easy to use. The predicted relationships were very easy to understand, and looking at the trees and messaging people. So I've always liked that. So I wanted to get onto MyHeritage as soon as possible. So Joe found his result came back. He had first cousin and he had second cousins, but lots of them, as I've always found with Irish DNA results, they have big families. They have got a lot of results all over the world. So it was a lot of mixed up results. I connected right away to one of Joe's second cousins, who happened to be living around a 10-minute drive from where Joe lives. He knew probably of the family, and within a week, he was at Joe's door to welcome him into the family, which by this time, Joe was over 80 and was amazing. I think Joe was a little bit bemused. He couldn't quite understand that it happened so fast like that. And we didn't quite fully know how they were related at that time. We just knew they were cousins, which was fantastic. Really welcome and opening and very noble reaction. I went on to do the MyHeritage DNA, as I've told you, I've uploaded, and there was first cousins on there, second cousins. The first cousin of Joe's, as it happened on his mother's side, we eventually found out, connected right away, gave the family tree, shared as much information as they could, and encouraged her members of her family to DNA test as well, which was really fantastic breakthrough because it just supported the information as it was coming in and we were piecing that tree together. When we double checked on MyHeritage DNA, Joe had a half sibling sitting there. That half sibling had been DNA tested years prior, had been there all those years, and that was a fantastic breakthrough. And we messaged, and eventually they made contact and made a relationship. Eventually managed to find both sides of Joe's family, and he visited his mother's grave, which was just 5 minutes away in the car. The irony is that Joe was Joe was an hour away from where he lives now. He was left at that hospital, outside that hospital, roughly an hour's drive away. But the ironic thing is, Joe was taken right back up as an infant and put in a family which was roughly the area where his own family came from. About a 10-minute drive on either side. So Joe could have been gone anywhere in the Irish state. He could have gone north, south, east or west. He could have been put to a family in another county in Ireland. But he was actually brought back, whether it's by coincidence, luck, or prearrangement, we will never know. That he was brought back into the heart of his own area, and his own family roots were in that area. And the graveyard, where he dug graves as a gravedigger in his lifetime, he was surrounded and filled with his own family. And that was a great realization, and I'm really happy. Joe was very happy to know where he came from. That's all he wanted to know. And then he was lucky enough to meet relatives on his own side and receive letters and cards, something he'd never had before. And he had to send them too. He had to send them to his own family. And that was his responsibility then. But I did tell Joe, you can, you know the thing, Joe, I said, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your own family. You've got to look after them now. And he liked that as well. So I found how to do all this DNA work by reading online, figuring out and asking people online to help me. And also Joe's cousins were good too, putting things together. I've put a couple of links in there, real important one, DNA Painter. It was great for cross-matching the DNA results. I also went to an event run by MyHeritage in London, led by Daniel Horowitz, and I was dying to ask him at the end of the chat for a little bit of advice, but there was fewer people wanting to ask him questions, so I just left. And it was such a difficult family tree, Joe's. It was so hard. I thought, if I ask him anyway, he's going to have to do what I do and keep lying down in a dark room, because that's what it was. It took a lot of, frazzled the brain, took a lot of work, but it came down to the kindness of strangers and his own family and connections who wanted to help. And that was a great story, and I was very glad for Joe. And Joe said to me that he wanted to help other people in that same situation by telling his story. Joe, like many people in his lifetime, It was a time of silence. You're not to speak about these things. You weren't to talk about them, and you certainly weren't to ask questions. And if you did ask questions, you very often didn't get any answers. And often you got turned on your back with a smart word. And it was wrong. And it's changing. And Joe said if his story could help another person, if one other person, he would tell his story. And that's what he did to his local newspaper at the end of 2021. He had become ill during our search, and I'd located what I believed to be his half-sister at the time in America. I sent her a MyHeritage DNA kit and asked her if she would consider helping us in this. And she did. She took that DNA kit. And the results, well, I was waiting for the results, and Joe became ill. And I got worried. He was over 80 and he was becoming ill. I contacted MyHeritage and I asked them, I explained our situation. And MyHeritage came back to me right away and said, we are going to expedite his results. And that gave us time. It was very generous and kind. And I've felt that with everything I've spoken to about MyHeritage. It is our heritage, it's our families, and I got that feeling. They really wanted to help, and they did help because they expedited those results and they came back quicker. And then it was proved that this was Joe's half-sister. They consequently made a connection, and then COVID hit and restrictions happened, and they were in 2 different countries. Eventually they did meet. She was in her 80s and he was in his 80s, and her husband came too and he was in his 90s. And those people met and connected, and that was priceless, and it was amazing. And we bought time by the kindness of MyHeritage expediting those results and by everybody helping us. And Joe deserved that. I was very glad for him. And a lot of people deserve to have the same kind of access to information. And unfortunately, it can be difficult, but we have got tools. If you can find someone in your family who can help to process DNA, family trees, I'd recommend asking their help. Also, there are online resources like Search Angels. They'll help you too. There are people online who help people find family. You don't have to be on your own, but it's worth to keep trying, keep asking, keep annoying, and just keep at it, because you're not doing anything wrong. And it's good. The DNA speaks for itself. You can't take a story back, but it can make a story. Joe and I went to his mother's grave. We paid his respects, and that's all he ever wanted. And everything else after that was a bonus. And sadly, Joe passed away earlier this year, but he knew his people. And to an Irish person, that means a lot. All the very best and good luck for everything you do. I just wanted to put on there that was a picture of Joe in his as a young man, and then his foster mother. I'd carried that photograph to England, to Ireland, to America, which I'd had for years, and I kept asking people, do you know who this lady is? Who's this lady? I brought it into Joe one day. I said, do you know who this lady is? He said, that's my foster mother. I didn't know that. I'd carried it for a long time, and they were neighbours to where my father was grown up. So I finally got that answered. So if you keep going, you will get answers. You just got to ask the right person at the right time. I put some links on to how I did my search in Ireland. The DNA tests were vital, encouraging people in families to do them, encouraging people within families you don't know, asking them if they'd consider taking one helped me. And a lot of people did take one. So it helped us put everything together. I linked to those people who did the DNA testing. I found their trees, and sometimes a lot of times people didn't answer, or they couldn't help, or they just didn't know. A lot of the time in Ireland, people don't know. Even going back 1 or 2 generations, the resources weren't there. You didn't often speak about family, and they just didn't have the information. But you can try other ways, especially speak to those Irish neighbours if you're over in Ireland. I got a lot out of the Irish neighbours. And I looked and read around a lot of the subjects, especially about mother and baby homes. I researched a lot into townlands and boundaries and districts to find out that I was actually looking in the right place. And I joined a lot of these online groups, the genealogy history groups and the Facebook groups especially, because you could join these, I don't know if I said this before, but you could join these national genealogy groups, and they could perhaps link you to more specific townland genealogy history groups or people they know. It's all about who you know. And connecting to people is the most important thing. I did email, handwritten letters, and in person. I knocked on people's doors. That's not for everyone. That's what I did. That's who I am. And luckily for me, it helped. And it also helps in Ireland if you're ever visiting someone, you bring something with you. If it's a brack or a fruitcake or a bottle of whiskey, you'll be made most welcome. And I just want to add on about docost.ie, which was a wonderful website I found. It's an Irish archive, but the school's collection in that archive is stories written in the late 1930s by all the Irish children in all the schools in the Irish Republic in the late 1930s. They sent the children home and they asked them to ask their grandparents, elders, parents about their lives, the evictions in that area, the famine stories, the neighbours, the properties, the fighting that went on, the food they ate, their religion, and they documented those stories. It's a fantastic archive. It's got names of families in there, locations, localities, and you could identify people that were related to you in there. I certainly have, and I've done that for other people too. There's a photograph collection in there as well, which you can have a look at. And they did ask for volunteer transcribers. I got so addicted to the stories, I transcribed 1,000 stories, and they were mainly all about my own family's name and area. It was a really great resource, which I enjoyed, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. I told everyone I could about docost.ie wherever I went, in Ireland and England. And an Irish lady told me Dukas was an old Irish word for location, which to me made sense because they were talking about locations in that archive. And also, it all came down to ultimately the same thing again. We all have that location somewhere, and we all have that sense of belonging to that location. And it's that connection again, that sense of belonging to your people. It's what I was searching for, and I helped other people search for it. And if I can do it, you can do it. I hope you heard the rest of this. All the very best of luck to you, and good luck in everything you do. Thank you. I've finished. Did you hear that?
Yeah, we heard every word. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And I see so many, so many comments here about what an incredible story it was and how much you helped. And it was just so lovely. Moira said, thank you for an excellent presentation and for all the links. Yeah, just so many comments. Linda said, love this story. June said, what a precious gift that you were able to give.
I think the people of Ireland gave him that gift because the people really, it's the connecting, I think, and speaking to people. And I think you can do it. You can do it on paper, in black and white, with paperwork, and with speaking to people and connecting. And it's like we're connecting now to June and Moira, and that's how it works. And it's really worth doing. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks, Esther, as well, especially with the difficulty.
Yeah. No, this was so lovely. And I think it's such an important lesson for all of us. You know, every day we get messages. We post a lot of stories of users who find family like yours. And, we'll often get people who comment on them and say, oh, I guess it's too late for me. I haven't found anyone yet. And it's not true. And I just want to say to everyone that, I think the message here is to really never give up and to be persistent like Bernie and to keep at it.
And when I originally went looking for my aunt's people with a name like Smith, where I approached on her behalf formally looking for her people, they kind of said to me too, it was a long time ago, and with a name like Smith, they even kind of said to me, the chances of finding anyone are really, really slim, which I agreed with. But at the same time, it was my aunt, and I was looking at her face, and she was looking at my face, and I'm going to try. And it worked for us. So it was just really lucky, I think, as well. And especially with Joe's case, he was extremely lucky to find family on both sides, which I know is not the case for a lot of people. But I do think there are sometimes things out there I've found in my own experience. I even thought to myself, this is impossible. It's not going to happen. But I found a whole wealth of information. So I think it's kind of, people could remember that, it could happen for you as well. I just hope they take some hope from that, because that's certainly what Joe wanted to pass on. He'd waited over 80 years, but he did
Yeah.
actually get everything he needed in the end, like so many people are doing. And I think DNA was really the key. So good luck.
And like you said, yeah, more and more tools are coming out every day,
Yeah.
more features, more technologies that can really help with the journey. And you know, it's never too late. I think that's really the
No,
important message here. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So now we get the honor of giving away my Heritage DNA kit to another lucky viewer to help them with their journey. So that's very exciting for us, Bernie, that we get to
Yeah.
award that to somebody here in the audience. And our winner today is Kathy Rose Bates. And I actually already read Kathy's comment earlier, but Kathy said, I think you missed it, Bernie. It was when you got disconnected. But she said, I used Live Story from my deceased mother in law. Because of the photo I chose while watching it, I realized how much our son's older daughter resembles her great
Wow.
grandmother.
Amazing.
So, yeah, just lovely, Kathy. Thank you so much for that comment. We'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your DNA kit. Thank you to everyone who wrote in and for all the lovely comments. And Bernie, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
to you. This was such a lovely story. You know, I see comments here about how you should make a movie about it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's just so moving and so inspiring, and we loved hearing it from you. And I'm sure there'll be many, many replays of today's session.
Yeah, I must replay it too and see what I said, because I'm sorry that I got cut off. But I think the movie, I think we've all got a movie, haven't we? We've all got a story, and we just have to find that story and write it down. Even when you'd ask me, I'm still talking, is this okay? When you'd asked me to put this presentation together, I had to go back and actually look at what I'd done myself. I never wrote anything down. I kept a lot of it up here and figured it out that way. And it's hard to make that timeline, but everybody works in different ways, and we've all got a story, you know. So it's worth keep going. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone out there. We'll see you next